Okay, looks like we are good to go. Wonderful, I see it operating. Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Natalie. Or well, here, let me restart that. Natalie Giazzo, Ganowiyoge Goyogono Nodage. I am Natalie. I come from Oklahoma Cayuga people. This is the Food Sovereignty Grantees panel. I'm going to start and open this by saying a little prayer. I'm going to go off camera and then I'm going to say it again. I'm going to go off camera and then I'm going to say a prayer and then I'm going to say it in English. And then we will really get started with the good stuff. So, 1 moment. Swaguego, Swarosio, Snigai Waka. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Ongosoa. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Etinoha Oejade. De Wadanahonyo ne Hadawenu Rage Onoguatra ni. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Wayaniota. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Odehadoni. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Gadino. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Onagaonyo. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Kionheko. Dead Wadanahonyo ne Deyowawene. De Etanahonyo ne Etisot Hadawenu Dakies. Des Wadanahonyo ne Sarwagia Edeka Kakwakies. De Etanahonyo ne Etisot Asoheka Ethni Dakies. De Etanahonyo ne Ujisodaja. De Etanahonyo ne Kie Nio Guedage Hadio Hageno. Des Wadanahonyo ne Sanguaidiso. Daneto. Nagakweni Ike Akakieda Kanahonyo. Daneto. Everyone listen for a little while. The people, we will greet each other. We will give thanks to our Mother the Earth, and we will give thanks to the weeds and medicines. We will give thanks to the hanging fruits, and we will give thanks to the trees. We will give thanks to the animals, and we will give thanks to our waters. We will give thanks to our sustenance, and we will give thanks to the stirring winds. We will give thanks to our grandfathers, the thunderers, and we will give thanks to him, our elder brother, sun. We will give thanks to our grandmother moon, and we will give thanks to the stars. We will give thanks to the 4 heavenly beings, and we will give thanks to him, our creator. That is for all that I was going to give thanks for today. That is all. Okay, let me just scroll back up in my notes here. Thank you everyone for being here. Today is day 4 of our Blue Jay Festival. Today we're going to have some of our food sovereignty grantees. We're going to hear a little bit about their experiences, their projects, what they've been able to accomplish, and I'm very excited. Oh, thank you, Nyo, Helena, Arlena. So what Blue Jay Festival is, it's arts, culture, it's community connection. This is our annual autumn event, and I'll have a link with the schedule and more details if you need it. And so we also do have an event sponsor for the first time. That is the Seattle Foundation. So big Masi, big thank you for their help in this putting on this event. And today I'm going to introduce to you some of our grantees. We're going to listen to their stories and we're going to listen to who they are, just a quick introduction. And then there'll be a little bit more with some PowerPoints and or speaking from the panelists. And so let's start off with Shar. Name a little bit about yourself.
Natalie.
Mm-hmm.
Hasquile, Charlene Queen Sna, Tina Chen, Tra Homolchison Ochameo, Squamish Chin, Snanaimel Chin. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Charlene Seward, and I'm a member of the Squamish Nation with close ancestral ties to the Snanaimel Nation. I'm located on our traditional unceded territory here in what is now known as North Vancouver. My traditional territory within Vancouver is Sanok Village, and my aunt, Chief Janice George, is our Siam, our great one, and I'm so excited to be here with you today. Thank you.
Helena or Louise, feel free to go.
San Hezun, Helena Benozalio Jacob Sauza, Pla Aloga Hutsan Sadansalit, Devaya Kaplas Do, Ita A Kani Alpha Uza, Ina A Quetzaltuna Buuza, Ita A Badeshnaka George, yes, Helen Hoffman, Habauz Kaila A, Ina A Badeshnaka Lillian, yes, Fred Olin, yes, Lorraine, yes, John Honey, Habauz Kaila A, Sekun Guichbak Buuza, Sadenaka, Yadad Ligats, yes, Nilo Etan, yes, Sadigatsi, yes, Seketla, yes, Inasi, yes, Sadadza, Habauz. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lena or Helena Jacobs. My Danaka name is Benozalio. I'm originally from the village of Ruby, located on the central Yukon River in Alaska, but I live in Anchorage on Dena'ina territory. I introduced you to my parents and my grandparents, to my husband, and to my 6 children. And I am here representing the Alaska Native birth workers community. Thank you for inviting me, and it's good to see everyone joining today.
Louise, whenever you're ready.
Are you ready for me? Louise Edmo Dixie Inania, na Benaquit Dewell Sosoni, na Cultural Resources Director, na Didiai. My name is Louise Edmo Dixie, and I'm a member of the Shoshone Tribes. I work as a Cultural Resources Director for the Shoshone Tribes. And I will just explain a little more as we get into my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And so what we're going to have next, we're just going to have each person present a little bit more in depth about their project. We'll start with Lena first. So Lena, you are good to screen share.
All right. Hopefully I do this right. I always get a little nervous whenever I'm asked to screen share.
Don't worry.
I want to make sure it turns up okay. Okay, are you guys seeing a full slide?
I see a little address bar at the top, but it's not distracting.
Oh, oops. Okay. Let me just make that a little bigger. But you don't see notes or other open tabs or anything. Okay, all right, here we go. First, I just want to say, I put it in the chat, but I just really want to say Anavasit, Natalie, for opening us up with that really beautiful prayer that felt really grounding and really calming. And I just love hearing our native languages. So I want to say thank you for that. That was a really beautiful start to today. So I was invited to join today as a grantee of NIF's Food Sovereignty Grant. And I'm going to give you a quick overview of who the Alaska Native Birth Workers community, who we are, and then what we do that specifically pertains to some of the food sovereignty focus of today. So we are a grassroots group of volunteer Alaska Native reproductive justice advocates, full circle birth helpers or birth supporters or doulas, childbirth educators, breastfeeding counselors, healers, caregivers, public health researchers, scholars, parents, aunties, and an Indigenous midwife organizing to reclaim Indigenous birth practices and support families from preconception through postpartum with culturally matched care in Alaska. Our co-founders include Dr. Charlene Upbook, Stacy Lucasen, so I'm going from left to right, and she's got her daughter Olga, and then in the center is Abra Patkutak, and then there's me, and then there's my sister Margaret David, who's also on the line today, so I want to give a shout out to my sister, and certainly invite you to pop in and say anything later when we've got open discussion to add to this presentation. And she's holding her daughter Tala. Both of these baby girls are 2, and they've been with us since we first started organizing. Our vision, we envision our communities reconnected to birth through the reclamation of ancestral knowledge and exercising sovereignty from birth. And a tagline that we use a lot is sovereignty from first breath, and thinking about how we can help support birth experiences that really emphasize sovereignty from that first breath outside the womb that can continue throughout a person's life as an Indigenous person. Our mission is to serve Native birthing families so they feel supported, well cared for, and full of the information they need to make confident choices around reproductive health, birthing, and parenthood. In doing this, we seek to reclaim as well as create new ceremony to heal our ancestors, ourselves, and future generations who may have been harmed through the colonization of our bodies, our healthcare, and our birthing practices. We really value upholding our responsibility and service to community, offering culturally matched care, maintaining our connection to our sacred lands and waters, and upholding ceremony and cultural teachings. And one of the things that we've specifically learned about upholding ceremony is giving ourselves permission to recreate new ceremony while also trying to remember that ceremony and those practices that were taken from us through the direct disruption of colonization. Our services really focus on 3 areas. The first is offering direct support to Native birthing families. Next, it's growing a statewide network of trained Native birth workers. And then third is collaborating with partners for systemic change to better support Native and rural birthing families in Alaska. So it's kind of like the first, second, third sister tier of how we're approaching this work through multiple levels and multiple systems. Some of the specific events that I just wanted to highlight that really uphold this is we just finished last month our an Indigenous breastfeeding counselor training, and we were really honored to have Cami J. Goldhammer and Kimberly Moore Salas come up to Anchorage and host the training for a full week. I know they're part of the NIF fam, so I just wanted to give a special shout out to them. And we hosted a 5-day, 45-hour course providing foundational lactation education and certification to Native people to provide clinical breastfeeding support in their communities, therefore really supporting and upholding this very sacred first food of breast milk. We had 23 certified participants come out of this training, representing 10 different communities statewide, and the age range was from teenagers through elders. And in fact, you can see one of our little ones. This is baby Olga, who was in that intro picture, learning about breastfeeding at a very early age too, during some simulated activities that we did. So it was a really fun training, really amazing trainers. And we're just so proud to have this whole huge network now of Indigenous breastfeeding counselors who can really be a huge asset in their local communities to support this first food and to support this sovereignty from baby's first food outside the womb. We also hosted a prenatal nutrition and traditional plants class. So Margaret, who's on the line, taught this class along with another Indigenous midwife. And we were really honored to also have an elder and guest speaker who apprenticed with his grandmother, who was a traditional midwife and herbalist, to tell stories about our sacred connection to plants. And this activity was designed to promote wellness while awaiting their new baby, to build community and to celebrate our traditions as Indigenous peoples. And we had 25 people from all across the state, pregnant people, plus Native birth workers, to help them grow their own knowledge and ability to offer services like this to families that they serve. And we made an herbal iron syrup and a nutritional infusion drink to just really support prenatal nutrition, to call back our knowledge around using traditional plants as part of our regular diet, and it was so much fun. So here's just a quick screenshot of folks that we had calling in from all over the state. And then here is our kit that we so lovingly measured out ounce by ounce and mailed out to everybody. So they had all of the supplies that they needed to be able to participate. Another thing that we regularly offer to our community is supplies through a donation closet. This is something that was started years ago by the midwives at our tribal hospital here, the Alaska Native Medical Center, who midwives and other staff in the OB clinic who just out of their pockets would put together funds to make food bags for people who had expressed that they were experiencing food insecurity. And so we helped take this on and have been stocking the donation closet with high protein and nutritious snacks, and also like larger food bags that can provide multiple meals to a family. We're really responsive to the needs of our community too. We're really boots on the ground, really grassroots. And so when we hear back from folks about what their needs are, we try to be really responsive. And one thing that we heard was families who were traveling outside of Anchorage to give birth were just needing some extra supplies during their hospital stay, or if they were in patient housing, if one of their children were in the NICU or something. So trying to offer support with just tangible items to support breastfeeding. So we started putting together these breastfeeding bags that have these support pillows, skin to skin wraps, tea, breastfeeding pads, soothies, nipple cream, stuff like that to really support the production and the maintenance of that breastfeeding relationship. So those were just a few of the things that I wanted to highlight about our work. I think I probably went over my 5 minutes, so I'm sorry about that, but I do invite you to learn more about us through connecting with us on our website, nativebirthworkers.org, through emailing us, nativebirthworker@gmail.com, or looking us up on Facebook or Instagram, where you can see all of our events, learn more about who we are, what our activities are, and get signed up with our newsletter. So thank you for the opportunity to share. I look forward to hearing from the others and answering any questions that folks might have at the end of this panel. Basi.
Thank you, Lena. That was wonderful. Shar Louise, I don't know who's ready next. You are okay.
Sorry, I just realized I forgot to unmute myself.
All good.
So my project really started as an idea, as this dream and this vision that I'd had through conversations with my mother, through conversations with my aunts. And I'd been holding this dream for almost a decade, thinking about how I give back to my community, how I support my community, because they've given me so much. Because for me, my community means everything. And I guess I should start by saying I come from the Squamish Nation, as I'd mentioned before, and I live on Humulchison Reserve, which is located in North Vancouver. Our traditional territories span from Whistler and Squamish through to North and West Vancouver, all the way out to Burnaby and Port Moody. For this area, we are a fairly large nation. We have almost 4,000 people, and only half of them live on reserve. The groundwork for this really started a few years ago when I put together a survey wanting to find out what food security looked like within my nation, wanting to understand what the needs were. And the results were absolutely devastating. Over 300 people participated in the survey, and 40% of them reported that they were food insecure on a regular basis. meaning monthly. And I felt like I could no longer sit on this, like I could no longer stand by and watch my community struggle. I come from a background of facilitation and more so reconciliation. And I wasn't quite sure how to make the leap. I wasn't quite sure what it looked like to move from hosting dialogue series, from hosting workshops, into creating space for food security for my people. So this project was actually started through the Sovereign Futures program, the first cohort run by Nailihi. And it provided me with the skills, the confidence, and the knowledge to be able to move forward, to make my dream a reality. I think one of the most important things about this project is that it's community-led. I stepped in with this idea, with this notion that I would utilize all of this reserve land, yards that were being underutilized to grow food. And my plan was to create garden beds, to grow the food, to harvest the food, and to distribute the food myself. And one of the most beautiful learnings that I had right away, right from the get-go, was that people were invested in this. That not only did they want garden beds, but they wanted to learn how to manage them themselves. They wanted to learn how to grow their own food. So these past 6 months have been a beautiful journey of connecting with community, even through COVID, to reconnecting with the land. And one of the most important things for me has been creating space for our Munmun, our youth. So of the 30 beds that we run, 8 of those are run by youth. And some of them chose to grow food. My daughter planted an entire bed of carrots. It was literally just carrots, and you can see a small picture of it up there. And she loved it. She loved all of the carrots. I'd mentioned in a panel earlier in the week that another child had decided to grow just flowers, wasn't interested in growing food, but was interested in pollinators, was interested in learning about bees and flowers. And the sweetest part of that was that she refused to pick the flowers when they were ready, that she didn't want to harm them, but that she wanted to just see them, to admire them. Our Capilano Reserve has changed, and it's been a gift. There are a few projects running within our community. We do have a community garden also, but my goal was to create ways for people to engage with their food system, to take control of their food system with as few barriers as possible. What I found was that so many members wanted to be engaged in this work, and that cost and that knowledge were the barriers, that people didn't know where to buy garden supplies or what kind to buy or how to grow vegetables and fruits, or they didn't have $500 to invest in building 3 or 4 garden beds. So Nailihi really provided our community with an opportunity to step into food sovereignty and to create space for food security. In addition to the 30 garden beds, we actually, demand has outpaced our capacity. But later this fall in November, we'll be planting somewhere between 25 and 35 fruit trees. And this was what I found one of the biggest requests throughout the community, was that they wanted to have their own fruit trees, that in order to be food secure, they wanted to be able to grow what I guess we nowadays call food forests. And some of the greatest gifts through this work have been, working with my family and working with my community, seeing even our elders support and help us, whether it's, giving up a weekend day to move soil or weed or plant. It's been truly a gift. Oh, let me go back. So one of the major goals of this work was that it was focused on regenerative agriculture. So organic growing methods, really thinking about how we create a biodynamic space that enhances the environment instead of depleting it, instead of just taking everything out of the soil, instead of using fossil fuels, really thinking about how we give back. And this bike right here, you'll see below, that is the bike that I have used for the past few months to deliver the produce throughout the reserve. It's been wonderful. It's a great little project. And what's next? My goal by the end of next season will be to have 60 garden beds throughout the reserve and 60 plus fruit trees. This is just one of the beds. A lot of our crops did focus on fast growing crops. So we grew a lot of lettuce, we grew a lot of kale, collards, to try and ensure that we were creating as much as possible with what we had. And I want to thank Na'ilahi for providing me with the capacity to fulfill my dreams and to support my community through wellness, through education. And I look forward to continuing this project.
Thank you, Shara. That was wonderful. I had heard a little bit before in the Sovereign Futures panel, but it's wonderful to hear more now. And I like seeing the little bike and imagining you just going around. That's wonderful. Louise, whenever you're ready, feel free to screen share or just speak.
Let me get started by sharing my screen. Tell me if you can see the first slide.
Yep, I can see the first slide and then it shows the next slide to the right.
Okay, I'm going to switch. Okay.
There we go.
Okay. Well, my name is Louise Dixie, and I work as a Cultural Resources Director for the Shoshone Tribes. But we have been partnering with a number of different, we have a number of different collaborators that have been working on starting this project. It all stems from a Tribal Practices for Wellness grant that we secured 3 years ago. And one of the projects that we wanted to, at the time, we didn't know this would be one of our projects, but because of the work that we did in the first 3 years of our grant, we're able to move to this 4th year, which will be, we're going to include, with the help of Na'ilahi, the Food Sovereignty Grant, we will have, and our project is called the Tribal Museum Native Plants Education Project. Our reservation, the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, was set aside pursuant to the terms of a treaty, the Fort Bridger Treaty, and it was reserved for the various bands of Shoshone and Bannock people that were removed to Fort Hall from our various locations throughout Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, Montana, and Wyoming. And our people, we reside on the Fort Hall Indian Reservation, which is about 544,000 acres of land. So with that, Fort Hall is the agency area, and we have a huge I-15, the interstate that runs to Yellowstone, runs through our reservation. But next to the interstate, we have a museum. And we have focused on preserving and teach our younger people and our community about the traditional plants that our people have survived on. So on the right, you see here is a camas plant. And the camas plant was part of the camas prairie located in central Idaho. And that camas prairie was originally supposed to be part of our reservation, but a transcribers error left it out of the treaty. So, we return there every year to harvest camas plants. And this is a photo of the camas fields. And then we've been working with Sydney Fellows, who's the gal standing on the right. She's a student at Idaho State University that wanted to learn more about our traditional foods. So she's been working with our department to learn how to harvest camas. And in addition to that, we have been working with her and our tribal fisheries department to raise those plants in the tribal fisheries greenhouse. But in addition to the work that we're doing here with Na'ilahi, we've done some other work on developing a seasonal round calendar so that the work that we're doing will help to educate our younger people and preserve for the future the knowledge of those plants. So we developed a seasonal round calendar to teach about the seasons, the months, and the times for harvesting, hunting, and fishing, and other seasonal activities. The seasonal rounds that our ancestors once followed are important knowledge that is still respected and shared, and it needs to be continually passed down through generations. So what you see on our seasonal rounds calendar is you see the seasons of the year in the outside here, like winter is Domo. This is the Shoshone version. We also have a Bannock version of this calendar. And the spring is known as Dawani, and summer is Daza, fall is Yavani. And then every single month out of the year has its own name. So the calendar reflects the months of the year in Shoshone. In addition to that, the plants, the animals that are harvested in those seasons are also on this calendar. And then the various products that you can find during the times of the year are on here as well. And at the center of it all is water or ba. So our language is tied to this calendar for teaching purposes. So we host throughout the year classes on traditional food gathering. For centuries, our people have gathered food, and those include roots and berries and other food products for subsistence. So you can see in this photo, we call our choke cherries donam. And you can see in the middle photo, we had, as a part of our tribal practices for wellness grant, we took families out and actually harvested. And then we taught them how to take care of those and how to preserve them. In addition, our department has harvested and taken people to harvest pine nuts or deva. And gathering is not only a part of our cultural subsistence, but is required for our spiritual enrichment. And there is a spirit in everything, as our ancestors have taught us. And our activities are centered around that concept. Our nuana is a term that we use for ourselves, and that means the people. And they made use of everything that was possible in our environment, and a practice we still do today. On the top right, you see a wild carrot or yamba. On the bottom left are wild onions, ginga, and bitterroot in the central photo called Ghana. And on the right, basigo, camas. So what central to this all and the whole purpose of our grant that we applied to, will be applying this knowledge to, is we have a tribal museum that's located off of Interstate 15 at exit 80, directly south of the tribal casino. And here's a photo of it, what it looks like today. And you can see there really aren't many plants around there. There's a parking lot here. a gravel parking lot. And then the museum there's two different buildings here. On the right, you can see the footage that we're planning to fill with plants. And I'm trying to summarize this all because I don't want to go on too long. But with all of that traditional knowledge that we've gained, and with the plants that we harvested plants, and we harvested the seed along with it. So what we did was we teamed with our tribal fisheries department who allowed us to use one of their greenhouses to grow camas, bitterroot, and a number of other plants. And we're very fortunate that last year we were able to purchase, with the help of our Tribal Practices Grant, over 400 chokecherry trees, and those were distributed throughout the community. And some of them will be planted here. You can see on our this photo on the right, we have all this footage here on the lower left where we're going to plant chokecherry trees so that people will have access to harvest the berries off of them. And then because our people were gathered from all different areas, we will actually plant the appropriate plants in each of those regions. So what we propose to implement are plans that we developed with the help of the University of Idaho landscaping team. They had a class and they offered to help us design how we would place our plants. So this plant garden will consist of planting native plants utilized by our people since time immemorial. We will prepare plant identification signs with both Shoshone and Bannock terms with the English translation. In addition, interpretation would be created to educate visitors to our museum. And during the months of May through September of each year, there are approximately 3,000 to 5,000 visitors that pass through our museum because it's right on the interstate that goes to Yellowstone. So what you see here is a planned landscaping design. On the northeast side, we will plant those plants that reflect our people from the Boise Valley, because over 350 people were marched out of the Boise Valley in the spring of 1868 to here at Fort Hall. So this area will reflect the plants that come from that region. Then on the east side, we will have landscaping that will reflect those people who were rounded up and brought out of Grand Teton, out of the Yellowstone country, and western Wyoming that were removed to Fort Hall. So there will be native plants growing in that area. And then in the southeast corner will be plants that reflect people who were brought here from northern Utah and from down near the city of Rocks in southern Idaho. And then on this southwest side of the museum, and over right now there are some little concessionaire booths here on the bottom of the photo, but this is our dream of how we're going to create it. Is we're going to have some little interpretive walkways where we will actually have plants and shrubs where you can harvest various berries. So, and then of course the chokecherries will be planted along this west side, along with sagebrush, bitterroot, other plants that can grow in a semi-arid area. So that is what is happening now. Our plants are at the museum, they're not at the museum, they're in the greenhouse where we're being allowed to share with the fisheries department. So that is what our grant is for. We're going to fulfill the requirements of this grant through the planting of our native plants. So if there are any questions, I'm free to answer those. And I'll stop screen sharing.
Thank you for sharing that, Louise. That was wonderful. I had no clue that it was going to be so encompassing. All the landscaping that was going to be happening out there. That's really great.
We have,
Yeah.
we're very fortunate that we have a lot of partners that we've developed. We have a youth group here at Fort Hall that'll be helping us do the planting. We have other college students that are interested in helping with the planting because of the work that Sydney Fellows has teamed with us to plant the native plants. Our local extension service and the University of Idaho, they have a ag station near us. So we will be utilizing their assistance as well.
Oh, that's awesome. Now you just got to watch for the regional plant sales, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you. We really appreciate the support of the foundation, and we really look forward to working on future projects with you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you for joining us today. So for everyone that's here, whether you're on YouTube, whether you're on Zoom, you're more than welcome to put questions in the chat. I'll start us off with asking a couple, and we'll see where it goes from there. Louise, I won't ask too much on this one because you spoke so beautifully about how your work incorporates traditional foods and language and some of the teachings that come with it. So Shar or Lena, would you like to share a little bit about how you really kind of make that happen and make the cultural teachings and language and foods available to your community members?
I can go first. I was really lucky at the start of this project to be gifted seeds from a number of different people and communities. I was gifted tobacco seeds by an elder in our community, and was actually gifted some quinoa seeds from some South American Indigenous people that I'd met at a meeting. I think that growing medicines is so important. We have a large cedar tree in our backyard and tend and care and love it. I guess as this project moves forward, we hope to create more space for medicines and growing traditional foods. In this first year, it was mostly about growing easy to grow foods, teaching people that they could really dig into the soil, that it wasn't complicated, that you don't need a degree to kind of step into this work, but really creating space for people to jump into it and learning along the way together. I was so lucky. My aunt provided me with a booklet of traditional Squamish foods, where they're located, how they're harvested. So we've had opportunities to travel and to explore and experience and harvest.
Yeah, the ways that we incorporate cultural teaching, language, and traditional foods. I would say that the whole formation of the Alaska Native birth workers community is really grounded in our collective discovery and process of calling back these sacred roles. And kind of the formation of our group came out of a ancestral birth keeping gathering back in 2017, where up in Alaska, we hosted 20 Indigenous birth workers from all across the continent, and really just spent that whole week being immersed in our cultural teachings, learning about foods, plants, practices, song, language, sharing, and part of this community, we really uplift that communal sharing and that relearning. And as I mentioned earlier, like figuring out ways to create that new ceremony or modify and put together the pieces of what we've learned in a respectful and reverent way. So it really shows up in everything that we do. And one of the things that we really emphasize is offering trainings that are developed by and for Indigenous peoples, and trying to offer new models of care that really are grounded in who we are as Native peoples, that uplift our values, that acknowledge our relationships to our ancestral lands and waters. And for me personally, something that's been really meaningful is learning about plants. And right now I'm doing a postpartum healing lodge class. It's an 8-week class with an Indigenous birth worker. And she's teaching me so much about traditional foods as healing in the postpartum period, and how important that is to show up with these really healing, really sacred foods that don't just offer physical nourishment, but can offer spiritual nourishment during a very sacred time of healing from birth. So I would say that everything we do is pretty much really grounded in who we are and what we value and who we come from and who we're preparing future generations for.
Wonderful. And Louise, I know you guys have had the opportunity to provide, I don't remember if it was workshops or classes to local schools. Was that it?
And we've had the opportunity, to do numerous classes. We've actually that's one of the things that our department does year round. Before the pandemic, we've done traditional willow cradle boards. We've taught ladies how to do that. We make baskets. We've had classes on teaching ladies how, and those were probably the most well-attended classes. Oh gosh, it's been 3 years ago, I think we started those. And we've had people learn to make bags, they've made baskets to harvest their roots. And that was a main purpose for that. And then we've also held our people do traditional spearfishing of salmon in the Salmon River Basin. We're at the headwaters of the Salmon River. Our treaty includes our right to hunt and fish off reservation. So our tribal fisheries program, in order to ensure that we have that right to continue in the future, we actually have programs to place fish on the gravel in the water of the headwaters of the salmon. So along with that, our people have traditionally speared salmon in the Salmon River. So we've held classes for young men so that they could learn how to make their own spear poles. We teamed with fisheries and our tribal fish and game department to teach them how to heat the willows or the pine that they use and to put their hooks on them. And we've held classes on what we call in one of the photos on our seasonal round calendar, we showed a picture of what we call a boro, which is for digging roots. It's a stick, a digging stick made out of mahogany or out of chokecherry tree. And we've held classes on that so that people could learn how our traditional forms of the tools in order for them to continue to practice what our people have learned. Of course, we have beadwork classes, and our people are known throughout the country for some of the best beadwork in the nation. And we're very fortunate that we have a lot of young people that are very talented. We have some of the best beadworkers here. And what's really fun is that, and really surprising to many people, is that the men who learn how to do beadwork are some of the best. They're really very talented. And then we have, we've held a number of different classes on our songs, on our dances. We've even done Zoom classes to teach about our ghost dance, about our one dance, about all of the different dances that our people do. So we try to maintain that. Even though we can't do in-person classes, we can do that by Zoom.
Wonderful. You each mentioned how important community is too in doing this work, and how important it is, how wonderful it is when the community shows up, and how important it is to keep the work going for that. I know your community supports this work, and from the work that you're doing and getting done, what ripple effects have you seen happen in your community? Does anything spring to mind?
Well, I can mention for the Shoshone-Bannock tribes, we have a sister tribe in Wyoming, the Eastern Shoshone, and they have visited us and wanting to learn how they could continue to do these things too. And so we've been working with them to make sure that they can do that as well, and help with other tribes. So there are 5 tribes that were removed out of the Boise, Idaho, that whole area. So there are the Shoshone-Paiute tribes in Nevada, the Burns Paiute, the Fort McDermott Paiute, the Warm Springs Paiute. All of those different tribes we worked with, we do share classes. They teach classes and we will teach classes. So we try to share those when we gather once a year in the Boise Valley. So we've had a lot of ripple effects. We have so many people that want to learn more and more, but some of these we only share with our own people. Yeah.
I think for us, one really nice ripple effect that we've seen is we offer birth support to members of our community at no charge. And so if somebody submits a request, then we pair them with a birth support person. And we've gotten so much positive feedback from our community that this is a service that they really love and value. And several of those families that we've supported, that birthing person is now signing up for our trainings to become a doula or to become a breastfeeding counselor. And because that experience was so positive for them, that they then want to go and offer that same service to our community. That's how I got into birth work. And then also one of the things that's so significant about getting support from grantors like Na'ahili Fund is that we fundraise for all of our trainings. So we hosted a full spectrum Indigenous doula training in May. And then we just hosted the certified Indigenous breastfeeding counselor training in October. We do all of the fundraising so that we can offer this training to Indigenous birth workers in our community without any financial obligation. We're really committed to removing barriers and access to training for our people, to serve our people. So we don't ask for any financial contribution from them. We fundraise to cover all of the expenses, but we do say that they have to pay it forward. So their act of reciprocity is then to take what they've learned from that training and then serve at least one Native community within a year of completing that training at no cost. And so we're kind of like setting up this pay it forward system where that ripple effect is just going to be inherent because they're repaying that gift that they received in that training that otherwise could have cost them, over $1,000 out of pocket when you think of the trainer's fees, the airfare, the lodging, all of that, because traveling in Alaska is not cheap. So seeing that ripple effect has been really awesome. And that's how our community has grown so much in the last couple of years.
I think that this opportunity has transformed not only my life, but my community in a number of different ways. And to see the scale of transformation has been really incredible. I can speak to myself first. Receiving this grant enabled me to switch career paths. I was previously working also in the charitable sector for an organization called Reconciliation Canada, and trying to figure out how to step into food sovereignty as a full-time job. I ended up starting the society, Skalk Lalem, which is Raven House in Squamish. And then also accepting a position with a local university, doing this work on a larger scale with First Nations across BC. And that's been really exciting to kind of scale the work up and look to create change in multiple communities. In terms of my community, I have kind of seen a transformation. People at first were a little scared of, stepping into this work. They didn't really know how, or they weren't sure if they had the time or the energy. And I now have people coming to me who at the first didn't even really want to bed and are asking about all of these different sorts of plants and how to plant them and when to plant them. But most inspiring was recently I had someone tell me that just making that leap, jumping into it, has inspired them to start their own nonprofit. So it's been a really incredible journey.
It's very exciting to hear from all of you. Recognizing we only have about 3 minutes left, I think we could get one more really quick question in, which is, I think, a good one. What is your favorite part of the work? Well, maybe it's not that easy to answer now. Think about it too. But what can you say is one of your favorite parts of the work? What really fills your heart?
My favorite part of the work is post-harvest, when I'm biking around the community, dropping off lettuce and kale and whatever it is that I've grown to deliver that week. And just getting to see everyone and talking to everyone, even if it's just for a few minutes, hearing the gratitude and the excitement in their voices as they tell me what they plan to use each plant for has been wonderful.
That makes me think of one specific moment. I have lots of favorites because I love this work so much and I feel so blessed to get to do this every day. But I also have a garden, which has been a huge learning process for me and so healing. And one of my favorite moments was harvesting, and I even counted them because I was so excited, 6 different vegetables fresh from my garden and putting that into daniga or moose soup with meat that we were blessed with and delivering that as a postpartum meal to a family. So thinking about how these really nourishing, healing foods are serving our families.
I too feel like Helena, that there's so many things that we so many opportunities that we've seen, that having to watch the young people harvest and prepare the foods and then sharing them, that's probably the best feeling that you can get, is to see our people actually using what they've learned how to create, including the baskets and the digging sticks, and learning more about the traditional foods of our ancestors and the importance of using those foods, because they're so used to going to McDonald's or to Burger King or to some fast food pizza place that they don't realize that our own traditional foods are more nutritious and can offer a better quality of life. So just seeing that in the younger people it's well worth the work that we do, and for them to learn the language. Because without the language, you can't make that relationship to the plants. So that's what I really appreciate, is that we have elders we have language classes here at our building. And we're very fortunate that we've had some really excellent teachers, and for the younger people to learn the traditional names of the foods is very, very important, and to carry it on.
Thank you, everyone. So Shar had to drop off. Unfortunately, she's going to another meeting, so I'll make this quick for everyone else that has the same problem. So if you want to learn more about Na'ilihi Fund, just go ahead and go to our website. That's na'ilihi.org. I provided the some links to each individual project or location, and just so you can see what's going on. We do have more Blue Jay festivities tonight at 6 p.m. We will have Itai Jeffries sharing a story with us, and then we're going to have a discussion after that. It will be one night only, so if you do want to talk about queer identities and all the lovely things that come with it, go ahead and join us on Zoom at 6 p.m. We'll have all the info on our Blue Jay schedule, and that's everything. Thank you everyone very much for showing up and joining us. And yes, hi Johnny. And I see a couple coworkers. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Yes, does anyone need anything before we finish?